James Angleton, the way you spin that story round. Always sharp, just like a tack when you're tracking the price of the dollar and pound. But drop the narrative, that thing that you inherited. Your history homos chariot just pulled up outside. Scott, William, Patrick on the scene, they're breaking up the subroutine. Something's crackling in your brain, MK Ultra make you go insane. Hey, don't you know we're only on the case for a good time, baby? Took a rose pill, now I'm reading these books for a long time, baby. Honey pots and psyop traps, you can trust the plan until you snap. Slop conspiracy everywhere. History homos clear the air. Close your eyes, what's truth or lie? Hiding in the space between. Reality's a tangled scene. Tune in, you'll know what I mean. Close your eyes, what's truth or lie? Hiding in the space between. Reality's a tangled scene. Tune in, you'll know what I mean. Hey, history homos only on the case for a good time, baby. Took a roach pill, now I'm reading these books for a long time, baby.
And we're live. Welcome back to the show. Joining Patrick and I this week is a favorite of mine to have on the show, an author and a podcaster extraordinaire on the Substack platform, Dom Scarcella. Welcome back to the show, Dom.
Well, thank you, Scott and Patrick. Always a pleasure to spend some time with the finest historians of the genus Homo.
Yeah. That's a high honor because that does encompass every historian in the history of our race. Actually, yeah,
and even more. Like you are the finest amongst the Neanderthals.
Yes,
as
true.
well. The Homo habilis,
Australopithecines.
There they are, all of them. Now, last time I was here, I made the mistake of referring to the History Homos ecosystem. You each corrected me. It is a biome.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I am glad to be back in the biome and participating with everybody in the audience. As I
happy
am
to have
most
you
of the
back.
time. Right.
The low
Yeah, no,
IQ
Dom is a
Dominion.
Sorry, Patrick. I was just gonna say
Oh,
Dom
sorry.
is a prolific listener and commenter on the show. I should mention. And yeah, a very valued member of the History Homos audience, but also
Contributor.
a contributor in his own right. Yes, that's exactly what I
Thank
Very
was
you.
going
much
to
so.
say.
Some of my favorite episodes. That's
But Dom, so I decided that something sort of, I think we've been like swimming in this pool for a while now, Patrick and I, particularly in the realm of our Substack content,
Okay.
our bonus episodes. But we've been sort of swimming in the waters of like the Enlightenment and the 1800s philosophy and the beginnings of libertarian thought and just the predecessors were what will be the century of ideology, which is what people often refer to as the 20th century.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and I thought since you are a avowed libertarian commentator, would you say
Okay.
that's a fair statement?
I am small. It would be small L libertarian. I'm not affiliated with the Libertarian
Naturally,
Party of.
yes.
Yeah. So yeah,
Thankfully, you wouldn't be on
anarchist,
the show if you
voluntarist,
were.
Christian. Yes.
it's really a way to get them to the table, and then you really show them what they're in for, which is something much better and more redemptive than big L, big L
Or
on the
little L
forehead.
libertarian.
Right. Oh yes,
Libertarianism
big. I am not the big L
on the
libertarian. That's right.
forehead.
um,
Hey
but yeah,
now,
so I would say for me, for my part, I would say out of all the libertarian thinkers through the years, that I probably most politically identify with would be Lysander Spooner. So I figured, and we have, by the way, done an episode on him before,
Okay.
previously on the show back in the like 4 years ago, with Legal Man, by the way. Shouts out to Legal Man, excellent podcaster and Twitter follow, I should mention actually. I truth be told, it's been 4 or some odd years, and I genuinely don't remember much of what I had said on that episode or what we discussed. Patrick revisited it, and he apprised me of. Could you just read me back that quote that I had said on the episode? I will
yes.
not be saying it.
Wait, so now you're gonna have me saying it,
Well,
which
you're
we
quoting
plucked.
me, yes, but this is 4 years hence, and things have changed in my life. And
What was it? Something to the effect of, you were referring to the Constitution. You said, I'm not constrained by your morality. I drink and drive, which is, yeah, something that Spooner, which you would agree with, would denounce greatly if he had the conception for an automobile.
True, you would
Yes,
think, yeah.
prohibitionist, to my understanding.
Was he? I didn't know that. I
I
did
believe
not know
so,
that.
yeah.
That checks out for his overall sort of character, I would say. He's sort of not neatly but broadly fits into the transcendentalist framework, which is often accompanied by teetotaling.
Suns and sun staring.
True, yes.
Maybe not. But
um
all the same, yeah, you were joking, of course, which, yeah, we
I was
joke,
sober at the time, actually.
as a
This is
matter
the
of
funny
fact.
part, yeah. Um
So, and other, great things like, which we should touch on throughout here. I'm quoting Scott again here. Social contract, constitution. How about I'm doing none of them? It's There really is a presumption placed upon every single, and I love the language that Spooner uses. He literally says it's as if the government owns the planet and you can't be born without immediately being
subject to it.
yeah, impressed upon. So yeah, there is something about, we no one ever thinks we should go back to the beginning. Why? Who agreed to what and when and why?
Right.
And why are we here now? Yeah.
Right.
So.
And to the point, and again, I apologize to you, Dom. I didn't prepare you for this, but I realized that there was a aspect of the letter to Charles Sumner. We're going to be talking about some of his letters today, primarily, but I forgot
Spooner's
that
letters.
Mr. Spooner's letters.
The Spoon
And
Man.
but what is it in the very first line of his letter to Charles Sumner, he mentions like, so you know my very well reviewed tract, The Unconstitutionality of Slavery, and I'm like, well, shit, I should have probably told him to read that. Because I have
can
read it.
infer what
Right.
his views were because he was basically reiterating them. It does seem to me interesting that Spooner was rather consistent. If he's so you're spanning the 1840s, 1860s, now in the middle of the war between the states,
and all the way until the 1880s. Yeah.
Yes, the second letter. So, what was the if I can ask, because both of these letters were new to me, the letter to Charles Sumner and the letter to Grover Cleveland, who had just been inaugurated president. What was your reasoning for selecting these two letters to read? Because they're about 20 years apart time-wise.
I do have a reason, actually.
Oh, very good.
The reason is because I believe that, particularly in context with the 1845 was the year that he published The Unconstitutionality of Slavery. And again, this first letter to Charles Sumner is 1864 or 5, which regardless, it's in the pocket in there during Reconstruction, actually. And
the war's still going on.
But it was after emancipation, notably.
The Emancipation Proclamation, yes.
Yes.
But like the war still goes on till 1865. So this is yeah.
But the last part by the 1880s, well, I just basically the entire these three pieces I think show a real arc from in Lysander Spooner's Unconstitutionality of Slavery. He does very much so work within the framework of the Constitution with which to make his argument. You can tell he's hinting at his true feelings about government in it throughout. And which is to say he's an anarchist. He doesn't believe in the authority of government over him. But very much it's like written as if it's written from the POV of like a constitutional lawyer. And it pretty equivocally denies any oxygen to the idea that legally speaking, slavery has any basis in law. To the extent that, and I'll run through a little bit of he didn't really touch on this in the Sumner letter, but one of the things is it's worth mentioning that in the wording of the Constitution, there is no use of the word slave at any point.
Nope.
And it refers to servants on a term of service. And it refers to servants and terms of service and indentured servants as well, which there's no basis of racial slavery when you use the term indentured servants. First of all, typically it refers to somebody who paid their way to America by selling their labor for a number of years to get there. He refers to a pivotal piece of jurisprudence from 1772, which would be a time which America was subject to the laws of England, and further at the adoption of both the Declaration of Independence and the Articles of Confederacy and the Constitution inevitably, it does positively assert that all aspects of English common law were to be considered part of the legal canon of the United States. So this is important because in 1772 there was a case called I have it right here.
Somerset versus Stevens, I believe.
Stewart's. Thank you so much, Patrick. Somerset versus Stewart. William Somerset was a black slave who had been brought to England by his master, where they had passed
a Bostonian,
I should mention.
Don't
yes.
neglect to mention.
I will shamefully mention that was the case.
What did he work in tech? What was he doing? Finance? What was he doing?
Yeah, I think he was working in human logistics. But what's it called? So he brought his slave to England, and the character of England at the time, particularly in the place he was extremely abolitionist. They had had a something of a second awakening in the Protestant church there. So a number of abolitionists there, they rescued Somerset from this slave owner, helped him escape, and submitted a writ of habeas corpus, which refers to, of course, I think you should know what habeas corpus is if you're listening to the show. I'm just going to say that right now. But basically, it's the idea that you can't possess somebody unlawfully unless they have been committed, they're at least accused of a crime formally in court. And that by holding someone as a slave, you're violating their habeas corpus because they no longer possess ownership of themselves. And they're not considered an odious person or a threat to society. And the judge who was in charge of this ruled that the writ of habeas corpus did apply to Somerset in England, and he said that because there was no law condemning slavery in England, which is why the owner had brought, or Stuart had brought him to England. However, an institution as odious as slavery, there must be a positive assertion of law that outlines the regulations of it for it to be enshrined in law. Ergo, so you guys are following what I'm saying here? So because it's such an odious institution, there has to be a law like passed by Parliament saying slavery is okay in England. Period.
It's so odious they couldn't mention it.
Well, that's in the American Constitution. You're right.
Right. But there was nothing in the affirmative in English common law that
said that slavery was legal.
Which, if we're going by the positive,
assertion in legalistic terms. Yes, exactly. So, therefore, that meant that in all places in America, or that all the places that were subject to English common law at the time of 1772, which included America, if there was not a legally defined positive assertion of the institution of slavery, there was no legal slavery in any of those places. And don't you know it? It was taboo to make laws to legalize slavery, basically, in all of the American colonies. Maybe not taboo. That's not really the right way to say it, but no one had taken the time to do so.
I think taboo is the appropriate word. I think it is something based on the attitude that was constantly, recycled over the decades, was it'll work itself out.
Certainly, by the time the framers were making the Constitution, that was very much the smell in the room, I guess.
And after a point, they were still, it's what the whole basis of the Sumner letter, Spooner's whole issue with him was based in this.
Based in the idea that if you believe, well, we'll get to that in a minute. I got a little more ground to cover with this slavery being unconstitutional thing, because further, so yeah, we have the fact that it's technically there's no positive assertion in any of the state constitutions. So there was no positive assertions in any of the the colonial charters, the state constitutions under the Articles of Confederacy, nor in the Constitution itself. Of course, there's no reference to the term slave whatsoever. And there's only this sort of, for lack of a better word, half-assed oblique reference to slavery continually within the articles of the Constitution. And it's
perhaps it is not half-assed but 3/5 assed.
You know what? Solid point there. Yes. And even in the 3/5 compromise, they don't use the word slave, by the way.
No, they don't.
Which is a constitutional amendment, if I'm not mistaken.
What did I say? Helper?
Yeah, the help. Yeah.
No. I'm referring to the Bob and David sketch.
Oh, right. Yes. That's right.
If
Yeah.
you're familiar, Bob and David the sketch show, check out the Helper sketch. It's very,
They decide to rebrand slavery so it's a little more palatable for
Well, there you go.
for America.
would you like some lemonade, Bobby?
Um,
All right.
the what's it called? So okay, I also wanted to say that so yeah, it's worth mentioning here that framers like Thomas Jefferson uh were at the time, even at the time that they were slave owners and slave lovers, as some might say, they were no lovers of the institution of slavery. In fact, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, in the minutes of the Constitutional Convention, which did not come out for 50 years after the Constitution was ratified, James Madison himself said, have a great quandary over the institution of slavery. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, of course, by the way. I don't remember exactly what what he said, but basically he was saying that I don't like slavery and I consider it a contradiction of my own values as an Enlightenment thinker to even engage in it, even though he was a slave owner. And he hoped that within the spirit of creating a country that it's sort of raison d'etre is like for the expression and freedom of equality of man, et cetera, and so forth. All the boilerplate stuff that progressively through the generations, the institution would shrivel away and die. And that was what, of course, that is not what happened. It actually grew extensively after that. Due to things such as the economic value of cotton. That was a biggie. And yeah, many other things. But yeah, but it's not until someone like John C. Calhoun in the 1830s, by the way, who actually says, no, I'm going to say you nay, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison. I actually think slavery is good. So there's actually a really interesting, not symmetry, but sort of like mirror image you see between Spooner and Calhoun, by the way, because they utilize a lot of the same arguments, and they also empirically come to a lot of the same conclusions, but with different prescriptions. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Are they what, mimetic rivals almost
I don't think that's not I don't know that that's unfair to say that. Maybe they weren't super duper aware of each other, but like in terms of if like the country legitimately had like some sort of soul that or you could have like some sort of like
spirit of a nation.
Yeah. These guys were certainly fighting on the opposite sides, but it's interesting that their thought really sort of intertwined a lot.
Well, they were using what they had to work with, which was what the agreed upon, as Spooner gets into, the, what does he say? The social mores or
Social mores, yeah.
of the times that are actually, are dictating this constantly evolving social contract that's, kind of really, slightly more authoritative than the Constitution, that they're still quibbling about, can't agree on, 70, 80, 90, 100 years on.
Right. I was just thinking for a second ago, people always say like today's time period is like, everything's changing really rapidly, but like just think about like the lifetime of Lysander Spooner, like how much stuff changed during that time period. Like he did die in 1887, but they had like horseless carriages by that point. You know what I mean? Like they had stuff going. Like there was massive technological and social changes throughout that time.
Yeah, absolutely. He was born in 1808 in Athol, Massachusetts. We should mention, which Athol, it sounds like a deaf person insulting you. But
is that near Worcester, Athol?
I don't know.
Or is it down by Fall River?
I don't know anything about either of those places.
I'll find out. Keep going.
Like but nonetheless, yeah, to say that he was incredibly consistent, as we were saying before, so much so that the thing that changes throughout his letters is they go from warnings to I told you so's after a certain point. Especially, as Dom mentioned, this was 1864, the war's still going. The numbers he's talking about, 500,000 people, casualties. For what? For something that by the union's own admission, constantly for decades, this will go out on its own. This flame will flicker on, But was it worth killing? Displacing,
Right.
just torturing. It's just a misery for what? And it's something that still resonates. That's
Right. Well, in the Sumner letter, basically his main beef with Sumner is he's like, so I heard, so basically just to frame the context of the letter, basically it starts out like, hey, I talked to a couple friends of yours and they told me that you read my book
this was the New
and you
Jersey
agreed
thing I
with
was
it.
talking about.
Yes, I know. So you
Yes.
got a little more juicy goss on what's this guy's name?
Samuel G.
How?
Samuel Gridley Howe. Yes, sir.
I feel like I've heard this guy's name before, actually.
American physician, abolitionist, advocate of education.
That's
for the
right. He was a
blind.
big abolitionist, right? I remember this guy. Yeah.
Went to Greece to serve as a surgeon in the Greek War of Independence. I'm just, this is Wikipedia is bare, just the front. But as it turns out, here's a little tidbit about Mr. Howe. He sent over the duration of his honeymoon, he sent 40 letters. 33 of them were to Mr.
Chuck Sumner.
Yeah, Chuck Sumner. These two had what was called a romantic friendship, to put it in pedestrian terms. I dare not put it in the parlance of our times, but
He's
A
a
bromance.
fag.
this is the New Jersey aspect of this whole thing. I think, Dom, have you seen The Sopranos to any degree?
Very, very little of it.
Yeah, it's for the best. It's
Okay.
It's
it's
dark.
actually it's a great show, but it's grim. Richie Aprile is Lysander Spooner. He says, "I heard from a friend that you threw away my jacket that I gave you as a gift."
Yeah, it's true.
Is that
it.
right?
Yeah, it's him. Oh shit, it's him.
I heard. Listen, I heard this, and I followed up. I wanted to make sure I know he followed up with you because he told. You thought so through 17 degrees of separation, back and forth. Lysander Spooner hears from Mr. Howe, who is Mr.
His romantic friend, Sumner's romantic friend.
Sumner's pen pal, that Sumner agreed with Spooner's take on slavery and his, overall,
And he said, as a lawyer, I've examined it legally speaking, even, and I can't. I dare say that you could not argue against this in court. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no answer to it.
I also want to say, by the way, as I read this again for the second or third time today, I was standing or sitting, depending on where I was in the letter, not 300 yards from the bones of Charles Sumner.
I've been almost calling him Schumer the past 2 minutes. I swear.
They are senators who are like mainstays in the Lib Party.
That's what's tripping me up.
But I was
no
not
kidding.
300 yards from the bones of old Chuck Sumner. And I should also mention two other little tidbits. I used to be internet friends with his great grand nephew.
Oh.
Shouts out Keith Sumner. And also, I should mention too, is that Charles Sumner was the Massachusetts representative for the district that included my hometown of Stoughton, Massachusetts. And further, the famous Charles Sumner cane that he was beaten on the floor of Senate with, to this day resides in the Stoughton Historical Society in Stoughton, Massachusetts, in the center of town.
Who beat him with that cane?
I don't. Oh, I can't remember.
forget.
Maybe Henry Clay, I think.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It comports.
I could find out, but it's John. Maybe it was John C. Calhoun. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I gotta Google this.
And we have our
Beat
listeners to
Charles
thank for
Sumner.
the
It
Calhoun
was
episode.
Preston Brooks, South Carolina Representative Preston Brooks.
We won't avow or disavow or
I think that's a bit rich. I think it's a bit rich. Yeah. He was just filibustering after all. Seems a little rude to just attack him with a cane.
Yeah. So Dom, do you find that it's amazing that these senators who do have sway, now that you hear what they're actually spending their time occupying their minds with, and what they're really poring over, at their desks, it's love letters between.
Are you trying to tell me, Patrick, that Republican senators are having weird gay relationships? Some things never change.
It just adds another level to the flippancy of it, where
Yeah, they really are just screwing around while people's lives are at play. It's true. I think you are onto something with this.
From one week to the next, it's it'll work itself out to we're going to war.
Yeah. But
of course, the we does not mean them. It's somebody else they're sending to war.
Of course, it's the poorest among us, by the way. But I was going to say though is so the chief beef that Spooner has with Sumner is he's like, so you agree with me on my take? You say it's undefensible, and yet you waltz into Senate every day and basically implicitly say slavery is constitutional because you're not shouting it down as unconstitutional. And he's not, by the way, this is coming from a place where the war has already begun. This is not like a policy discussion he's having. So the war is like not just in progress, but it's like nearly over at this point. There's hundreds of thousands of people have perished of terrible deaths of just war and disease and starvation as a result of it. And he says, and further, by contending that slavery is constitutional, you've now given the moral high ground to the South for seceding, because they didn't say they didn't attack. They didn't attack the North for taking away slavery. If they had made slavery illegal overnight and then the South had struck back, that would have been a violation of the Constitution, and they would have been certainly and morally in the wrong, and certainly politically that would be very bad optics, as they say. By the way, but the fact that they said it is constitutional, that gave the moral high ground to the South for saying, okay, well, fine, we're just going to take our ball and go home, because this is ostensibly a voluntary union that we're a part of. No. But no, apparently not, because the North was not happy about this. And yes, the war took place. So now, according to Spooner, Sumner himself is the one with the blood on his hands, because he had, at least in rhetoric, able to affect the framework with which we interpret the entire series of events.
It was hypocrisy. Spooner seemed upset at the hypocrisy,
right?
That Sumner would would say something privately about his convictions, but then publicly give a different position. And I think there's some merit to what Spooner's saying, because the United States is one of the few westernized countries that needed a bloody war in order to do away with chattel slavery.
Right.
So why was that? Perhaps it was the hypocrisy and sort of leading people along and stringing people along as to what was permitted, what was not permitted, what was noble amongst these highly civilized people that they all pretended to be, and what was not. I think Spooner has a point that the hypocrisy at the very least prolonged and let the pot maybe simmer a little too long and boil over.
Definitely. And I would also say that
Mary Todd Lincoln.
Well, we'll get to that too. That's the real reason why the Civil War happened. But we'll get to that in a moment. But I was just going to say, though, is if they had allowed them to peacefully secede, which, by the way, would have been a constitutional act to do so.
Yes.
Naturally. The irony that Sumner sort of wanted to kick the can down the road forever and say, we'll just let it take care of itself. Ironically, I think the easiest way for that to occur would be to allow them to secede peacefully. Because economic pressures being what they were, that would isolate. Here's the issue: is that it turns out I didn't realize this until very recently, but apparently the British were really pro-Confederacy, and I didn't know this. However, I had previously understood it to be that they were, a pretty big abolitionists. They were going around the world ending slave trade, basically at the time as we were speaking. Now, meanwhile, they were also basically enslaving China via drug addiction. I should also bring up, but that's another again. It's the free market.
That free market.
But my point being is that things being the way they were, given the the development of the Industrial Revolution and the way that wage capitalism was developing, this would very much be. There was a time limit on the amount of time that slavery could continue to exist in the form that it was, at least as a massive economic power. Now, it could be that in the alternate history in which the Union never fought a war of aggression on the South to regain the control of the southern states. It may be that to this day there would be some like really antiquated form of like house slavery or something, which, by the way, I think is wrong. I wouldn't be into, but
they do it in Europe and shit.
They do it in the Philippines, bro.
They do it yeah. There's United Nations countries where people are like, oh, that's
our help.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Why bother with a name? That's our help.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, there was that article in like the New York Times or something where like there's like a guy going like, yeah, I grew up with a slave in the house and I feel weird about it, and she's dead now. He waited until she died to even write the article. Did you guys ever read that? The guy was Filipino and his parents were like super rich and like connected to the government there, and they moved to America and they had a slave back in the Philippines. I'm dead serious. It's a real thing. And they brought their slave to America.
Like this, yes.
Yeah, and they, the lady was so socially rigidly in the mindset that that's just the way what her role in life was, that she never left and decided to tell anybody that she was there under those circumstances or whatever. And then, she had a relatively long life, I guess, and then she died, and then all we're left with is this weird Gen Xer saying like, yeah, I had a slave when I was a kid and it was weird.
Which is a very Gen X thing to say. It's weird.
Yeah, it actually is a pretty Gen X thing to say.
Right? It's just weird.
I don't know how I feel about it.
Yeah, everything's just weird. You mentioned earlier, Scott, about all the changes that Lysander Spooner lived through. The 19th century, especially in the U.S., may have been the most dynamic century ever. I mean, when you talk about industrialization and the eventual discovery of petroleum and being able to refine it, that did away with the rapid industrialization, did away with slavery as much as anything, because it made slavery impractical. the pro-slavery argument, as you mentioned, was about economics.
Yes.
That it's just more economical to have this kind of workforce at your beck and call, which of course marginalizes the poor whites, who then find it more difficult to find employment, which is something that Spooner and others have talked about.
Yeah,
but
the
it was
interesting
really
thing about
rapid
that,
industrialization that more than anything to do away with slavery, because it basically refuted the old Malthusian type labor argument.
right? We're gonna have way too many people. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If I may, yeah, it's once industrialization, it becomes the norm, and the question arises: why do we care where they sleep? What do we care if they eat? If they don't show up?
In fact, it's actually more profitable to sort of sell them at a living, actually, especially if you own both their job and the things that they're going to be consuming, which is what you quickly find out ends up happening, by the way, throughout the next 100 years. I think it's interesting because Spooner himself, and particularly in the Cleveland letter, by the way, he goes on a really long tangent about sort of the inequalities with which someone trying to sell their labor comes to the economic table to someone who possesses capital, and particularly as bankers. He's got a big bone to pick with bankers and monopolistic bankers, which he would have, I'm telling you, he would have a conniption if he saw the Federal Reserve Act. Right.
He'd die if
he would just, well, he would have been very, very dead. But the funny thing is, if he had just lived 10 more years, he would have seen another Grover Cleveland presidency, and he would have seen Grover Cleveland oversee the sale of the entire American economy to J.P. Morgan and the Rothschilds.
And he would have lived to see it, but he would not have lived to write the 3,000th page letter to Grover Cleveland, term 2. And that's the funny thing, is that letter, considering his whole, what would you say, crusade against the Postal Service, and he wrote a banger of a letter that must have weighed 10 pounds for any mailman.
I think he published it, to be fair. Like, it was an open letter kind of thing, to be fair.
He just dropped it off.
It was a book.
Essentially, it has to be. It'd have to be. Yeah. With how many pages? There's 125 pages to my count.
So the PDF that we have here, it's like 3 times the word count of it looks like my book. I mean,
that's not a indicator of its quality, by the way. I hasten to say.
No, Dom just doesn't happen to repeat himself.
Yeah, he's not totally redundant. Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, is that this paper is a bit toothy.
Yeah. So.
Do you want to get into the banking stuff now, or do you want to wait? Are you just setting
we're
that
doing
up
a
for
potpourri kind of thing, I think. But regardless, what do you want to say about the banking? That's a massive aspect of his Cleveland letter, for the record.
Yes, and I found it very interesting because Spooner and Karl Marx are contemporaries, just on either side of the ocean.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And whereas Marx is decrying capital, because
inherently,
saying that the capital is wrong and the capitalists are wrong for the exploitation of workers,
taking
Spooner
their excess labor,
criticizing what Marx is criticizing, but Spooner, I think, correctly identifies the culprit as government control of money and credit, and
right, and also monopolistic control
monopoly
of banking.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, I think Spooner goes a little too, and if you will permit me just a little bit of a rant here.
Please.
One of the problems I have with even small L libertarians and liberty advocacy, freedom advocacy, is that while I think some of their heart is in the right place, they get human nature wrong.
Agreed.
They still don't understand what a human being is. It's the same problem I have with socialists, with the Marxists, with the communists, with the French Revolution. It's they get human nature wrong. And Spooner's argument against the monopoly on money and credit, in part, is that he thinks that if everyone were allowed to just take their land and create promissory notes off of that working capital, that no one would ever have to work for anyone else again. No one would ever have to sell their labor. And that's just not observably true.
Yeah, he definitely wasn't
Like,
right about
not
that.
at all. Like, I will use myself as an example. I'm not an inventive person. I'm not really an idea guy. I don't really want a homestead. I'll rent an apartment from somebody and go work for somebody else. Like, I'm still looking for full-time work. Like, I don't mind having a job. I'm not an idea guy. Spooner seems to think that freed from the monopoly on credit and the things attached to that by the government,
Right.
that everybody would be so inventive, and not only that, but have the kind of risk tolerance that Lysander Spooner has. And it's just not true.
Yeah, he's a
So
utopian.
while I appreciate his criticism of monopoly money and credit, I think there's something head scratching. Like, I can't stand when I read liberty advocates who you start reading them for a while and like, oh my goodness, this is a wannabe cult leader. He's just using liberty and freedom as like this hook. But he's so obviously a wannabe cult leader who's like, if you'll just listen to me and let me design your doggone society for you, then everyone will be better off.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you don't get it. And so I get a little of that with Spooner. So while he's clearly got the better of Marx, his contemporary, and he's using the same language, he's using the language of capital. So every time I hear somebody say, well, capital, it was capital and capitalism it was all invented by Marx. It's like, no, it wasn't. It so was not.
Yeah.
Other people.
Calhoun was dropping those word terms. Yeah.
I mean, Calhoun was dropping them. The French Revolution talked about the capitalists. The word capital itself, used for investment property and that which gets fed back into production, goes back almost 1,000 years to Middle English. So these are terms that people are grappling with because they are historical emergent phenomenon that people are grappling with.
Definitely.
And then it gets to someone like Spooner. Well, I prefer Spooner to Marx, obviously.
Right.
There are things about Spooner's worldview that I just don't think he gets human nature.
Well, I have a massive criticism to him. I think it's just interesting.
Go for it. Pile on, baby.
It's for the benefit. I feel like if he had just lived longer or was able to look at a crystal ball, I feel like he would. So, because he has instincts. We talked about this a minute ago. He has the instinct to go, there's an inherent imbalance between somebody selling their wage and a guy who has a job, and the guy who owns the factory.
Sure.
He sees that there is inherently an imbalance between that, and this is in contradiction with his conception that all human beings should be in some parity, maybe not in terms of like your actual wealth or whatever, but there should be some sort of balance to all relationships in his view. Now, and you definitely pointed out that he seems to think that if there was no monopoly banking, and which there was experiments, by the way, where there was none after him, I should mention, between him and the Federal Reserve Act, they went back to the non-centralized banking for briefly, and they experimented with both back and forth. He seems to think that if that happens again, there's like a utopia awaiting us. And that if the government would just get, this is another thing with libertarians that they have not been paying attention clearly, is they think if the government just got completely out of the way, then we'll be in a utopia naturally because of the magic of the market or whatever. But we ran that experiment in limited quantities, and that's not how it works typically. And by the way, someone who's really good at explaining why that is none other than Murray Rothbard. Murray Rothbard explains deftly how even without necessarily using the government, there were bad actors within the capitalist class who cartelized their businesses with which then they could extract more resources from the workers and concentrate it in their hands. But again, it does have to do a lot with banking and banking practices, I should mention. Um, but we're not going to get into all that stuff necessarily. Maybe if we find it irresistible to dive into at some point, we can. But I was just going to say though, is I think if Spooner were to look into a crystal ball and see where we ended up with our limited experiment in free markets that we do have, I think he would actually go. I think he would have the self-reflection necessary to go like maybe that wasn't it. That wasn't the entirety of it. And then I was definitely onto something about the whole unequal footing thing because it's definitely in the last 100 years since the Federal Reserve Act, I should mention, there has been a massive transfer of real wealth in the form of hard currency and real estate away from average people and into an increasingly small amount of people's hands.
Yes, and Spooner brings up land as a type of wealth and collateral.
That he's dead on about.
Yeah, and he is. I'd like to think that if Spooner were alive today, that he would have the same direction to his thought, but he would perhaps just get better at human nature. Like the market is not magic; it's not supposed to be. You know, it doesn't.
It's human beings acting and doing.
Yeah, and it's messy, but it's supposed to be. I mean, I like to tell people that the beauty of a free market is not success, it's failure, because failure is what stops incompetent people from causing more damage. One of the big problems with government is that they bail out failure, and so they prolong the failure. Look at the bubble bust and bailout economy that we've had in the US for 30 years now, back to Greenspan in the 90s.
Yeah. And
they
by the way,
prop up failure.
Yeah, they prop up failure, and it's all the same people they keep propping up as having failed, and they consistently have the same MO, which is, I'm gonna take all my money, my personal money, out at the last second and let everyone else hold the bag, essentially. And they control this. They utilize different signals within the economy to cause these booms and busts, and they're always one step ahead of the game because they're well connected to the central banks.
They're pulling the levers.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're the one determining when these policies will be enacted, then yes, you have an enormous advantage. If you're a crony and well connected, yes. So I don't think that human nature would go away in a free market, and I don't want it to. I like people to be able to try things, and I think Spooner would come around to that as well. I think if Spooner lived long enough to see more freedom in practice, he would have the same views, but he would realize that he is the exception, not the norm, with his risk tolerance and his creativity and his inventiveness that he displayed throughout his life. And so he would perhaps stop trying to remake the world in his own image and simply realize that, the variety of humanness is a wonderful thing, and it produces such prosperity in general, and it produces such progress in general. And it's okay if people are different and naturally fall into different places there. I'm writing an article as we're talking about this about why I'm against equality.
Yeah, well, it's unnatural typically.
It's unnatural and it's harmful because of how you get there.
Well,
and natural is another thing that Spooner brings up. He keeps talking about the natural conditions and natural rights, but he doesn't perhaps he's done it elsewhere in his long library of writing, but in the letter to Grover Cleveland, he doesn't explain too much of what he means by natural and rights.
He does that a little bit in Unconstitutionality of Slavery.
Okay, what's his explanation there? Is it the kind of thing you can bring forward?
Yeah, essentially he says that if there's no in any sort of well, basically, it's very much in the same keeping as someone like Henry David Thoreau. It's like you own yourself. By participating in a system, you are not consenting to it.
Okay.
And you have the ability. No authority technically can be put over you without your consent, essentially, is a major aspect of it. But also he goes to say that
Consent is revocable.
consent is revocable. Yes, that's another.
Yes.
That's part of natural rights. He considers it to be. It's like, as an individual, you can decide to stop consenting to something. And another thing is, in all interpretations of law, if unless it's explicitly written so as to deny one of their right of choice and consent, like, so if there's a law that which you've consented to take part in, and part of that law or part of that constitution or part of that system of laws explicitly says, I agree, I will pay this amount of money into the tax system.
Sure. That becomes contract law.
Exactly. It does. And that's exactly
Which
what I'm getting
Spooner
at here.
very much supports.
Yeah.
I want to toss something out to you guys here. Because I did this very early when I started writing on Substack. It's my very first Substack article. I take a stab at defining natural human rights. First of all, for an overview, when we say something is right, that's very simply just means a valid claim.
Yes.
If I tell you like 2 + 3 = 5 and you say that's right, you're basically saying that's a valid claim based on the definitions of 2, 3, 5 plus an equals.
1, not 0 in programming terms.
It's a valid claim. So when we talk about, say, human rights, we're talking about the same thing. A right is a valid claim that you have. A human right means it's a valid claim that you have because you're human and that you're supposed to be able to apply to anyone who is human.
Yes.
And then to say that it's natural means that it's pre-political, means that it's a claim you can make before you get into any sort of jostling with other people,
right,
over ideas and substance, and maybe
I think
competition.
Spooner himself might say that God granted it.
You could say that, like to say that there's a something that pre-exists you that gives them, but
It's
to stay away
deontological.
to stay away from religious language. It's natural human rights are
We don't have
claims
to do
that any person can make pre-politically simply by virtue of being human. And you get to that, okay, you have a claim to your own life, to your own person. That's the right of life. Nobody else has a better prior claim to your life than you.
Yep.
You have a claim to your own intentional actions and your consent-based voluntary interactions with others. We call that liberty.
Yep.
And you have a claim to any cultivated or duly obtained material goods that are not already validly claimed by another person.
Correct.
And we call that property.
Property.
So those are your valid claims that you can make. And what makes them natural is that they exist with you before you get into any political machinations.
Right.
In fact, your natural human rights are what you bring to
the table.
Politics. You bring that to your negotiations. And that's implicit in a lot of what Spooner says. Because in order to enter into a valid contract, you must have ownership of the thing you're offering.
Right.
And the other person must have ownership of what that person is offering. And you must be able to take possession of what is being offered to you and transfer it to someone who can actually take possession of the thing that you are trading. So it's implicit in what he said, but he never makes it explicit.
Yeah.
And
he definitely puts that in his earliest writings, I'm guessing. But yeah, he refers obliquely to it in the unconstitutionality of slavery. But basically, you nailed it.
Yes, so I would agree if that's his position. Then I would agree with what he's saying about natural. He hedges a little bit on whether he thinks labor can be traded or, as he says, sold.
Mm-hmm.
But then he's very big into contracts. Like people should be able to enter into contracts for whatever is actually theirs. So there's a little bit of confusion in the letter to Cleveland, and maybe it's because it was so long. That if you hold Spooner's later portion of that letter where he's totally on board with contracts and obligations, then you have to hold that, yes, you can sell your labor and that there's nothing wrong with it. Like, I don't have ideas. I don't have a lot of risk tolerance, but I'm fairly smart. I pay attention. I can learn. I make an effort. I have energy. I'll work for you. What do you got? You
Right.
should be able to trade that as something that you own and can then offer to somebody else in a real manifest sense. It's not an idea.
Right. I do want to say though is I think possibly this could be answered. His sort of caution when it comes to the sale of one's labor. I actually
Mhm.
like that wording, by the way, the sale of one's labor. But I was gonna say I would say the caution that he sort of displays is probably uh it's probably due to the sort of philosophical soup which with he found himself in the
Mm.
abolitionist circles and the transcendentalist circles of New England politics,
Mhm.
the hoi polloi of you know you got your Thoreaus and your Nathaniel Hawthorns and that stuff. Um, I would say that particularly I want to point to Thoreau here. There's no interaction. There's no like documented interaction of each other, but it's impossible that they did not know each other because they were at the same abolitionist meetings. So,
Oh, okay.
that's all. That's all I'll say. But I would imagine that there was sort of a prevailing idea that you live your values essentially. And
Sure.
some of the transcendentalists did this by like refusing to eat meat or wear cotton or something. It was as a display of their disdain for the institutions of killing of animals or slavery.
Mhm.
Um, so I think that part of the his positive affirmation of the idea of contracts and skepticism towards wage labor would be indicative of the fact that, like, he would say that it's part of his philosophy to give a fair contract of labor to someone if you were going to give them labor or buy their labor is
Mhm.
probably what he would say if you had asked him point blank about that, essentially. But I also want to go out of my way to say that throughout the sort of arc of these three different pieces, he's gone full anarchist by the Grover Cleveland letters. It's worth mentioning. Like with the first part, the unconstitutionality of slavery, he's very much working, like I said, within the framework of the Constitution. But by Cleveland, he's straight up saying the government are no more than organized looters or a band of criminals, highwaymen,
Mhm.
like just robbing us and pilfering en masse the wealth of the polity of the people they purport to be holding the rights of in escrow.
Mhm.
The
Yes. Now,
language
I did have
is
a
tough.
disagreement with him there as well. It's that he was saying that the people violating were sort of the order givers and not really anyone else in the government, just the
Well, of course
lawmakers
that's
to a
not
sense.
true. Yeah,
And
everybody's
like I was like, come
grifting.
on,
Yeah.
man, that's that's the Nuremberg defense. I was just following orders.
Yeah, well, I think the point of that is because he was addressing the executive. And so he
Sure,
wanted to like make it pointed at him. Now, I want to say this
it's
this is
all your
important.
fault, loser. Right?
Well, it's worth mentioning though that Grover Cleveland represented a stabilizing force in the nation because after the Civil War, for over a decade, there was nothing but Republican rule. Naturally, well, not naturally, but I guess but it shouldn't be surprising, I guess, because it was the Republican Party that had dominated the North, of course, and they won the war. Um, and there was a bit of populism going on, as you might think, amongst the people who felt unrepresented during this regime. And Grover Cleveland represented a sort of conservative, but also unionist position. So this guy was not like a neo-Confederate, but he was a Democrat, and he sort of self-styled as a proto-libertarian and deregulator, and also he was against against stuff like tariffs and stuff. He's a bit of a free market guy for the time, certainly for the time. And he also was like dedicated to sort of cracking down on what they call the spoils system, and also like just corruption and writ large, I guess. And so, but what really he was doing, not really, I don't want to say what really he was doing, but what his administration represented was a sort of rubber stamp on the idea that that's the Democrats were now going to be going along. You know what I mean? This idea that this guy was a pro-union Democrat after a long spate of obviously pro-union Republicans. And part of the speech also that he made that Spooner is in response to is talking about how we need to move forward from the pain of the Civil War, and also he also like sort of took the moral framework of the Civil War being a moral good, essentially, and a redemptive force for the country in repairing it from slavery or whatever. And this was like such a massive betrayal to Spooner, because he's saying this guy's trying to wear the robes of freedom, of my ideology, essentially. But then he's just then turning around and he's giving the moral, he's claiming that the Civil War was a moral victory when they had no basis to launch an aggressive war that resulted in 500,000 people dead. So this was like
one that Spooner has already written could have been prevented by less hypocrisy on the part of people who were instead reading love letters in their Senate offices.
Yes.
There it is.
Exactly. That's what I mean. But so this was such like a nasty betrayal on the part of Cleveland. Because the other part is in his speech he's saying, guys, I just want every American to just have a really close eye on corruption, and if we do, we're gonna pull through this or whatever. And it's like, every American, so you're putting it on us? You're the government. You're the ones overseeing the entire thing.
The price for liberty is eternal vigilance. All right.
That's in the quote. That's a quote from the Cleveland speech. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mind you, Spooner's letter, I assume what set him off, because it's the first thing he starts with is you said something. I heard something. You said something like you're going to execute exact, and what was it? Equal liberty? Justice, excuse me. Exact and equal justice. What the hell is that supposed to mean?
Yep.
Which Spooner gets down to the science of justice. He doesn't quite go very deep into it. I think Dom, you'd probably be better able to put a definition on the science of justice than for the modern age, anyways, than Spooner would have then. But I think
I like that he was against public rights.
Right.
He was just blasting the idea of public rights.
Who's them? Who's they?
Right? Like the public rights? He's Section 5 of the letter to Cleveland says, legally speaking, the term public rights is as vague and indefinite as are the terms public health, public good, public welfare, and the like, which, he says, it has no legal meaning except when used to describe the separate, private, individual rights of a greater or less number of individuals. And I obviously thought of the COVID hoax.
Yeah.
Like,
public good, public health. Yeah.
Like, there's a public health and a public good and a public welfare and public rights that are somehow separate from the real rights that individual have, and the real
ones that are actually affirmed in the so-called Constitution.
Right. And so as I'm reading this, I'm seeing a lot of Spooner is foreshadowing 150 years of stuff that, as a nation, as a society, the U.S. is not solving the problem.
Yeah.
It's in many ways making it worse.
Yeah, it's that ambiguous words that they prefer to use so that they can, sort of abuse later on. Like,
sure.
I mean, that again, I talked about it like 2 episodes ago, but the framers, or I should say, the Federalists of the faction of the framers, very much intentionally worded things ambiguously so that this would be a constraint and an abusable system with which to accomplish various goals, both geopolitical and economic. Like, this was very intentional by that faction of it. And again, this is like the whole, like, Thomas Jefferson was against that kind of stuff, but he just bent over to it because he was so interested in making the Masonic ritual mall in Washington, D.C. He was so excited to make an obelisk, a pagan obelisk in the middle of the nation's capital, or what would be the nation's capital.
It's legal lingerie. It conceals as it reveals.
Yeah, it's true. It's a good way to put it.
So
just gonna say,
Patrick, to your point, yeah, I do think some of the vagaries there. Yeah, he's really going after Cleveland because, and as Scott, you were also saying, it's as if Spooner says, "Hey, I expect more from you."
yeah,
It's the same tenor of the letter to Charles Sumner. It's like, I expect more from you. It's almost like Spooner is disappointed.
yes.
You could
He's
see
an
him
old
putting
man at this
his
point.
fists on his hips and saying, "I'm disappointed in you. You should know better."
Yeah, which they should. They, after all, did go to college and mentor under a licensed lawyer for 5 years or whatever it was required. Meanwhile, Spooner, the first thing he did as a lawyer was break the law by opening a practice too early without his requisite 5 years without a degree. He only did 3. So there is, he repeatedly in his letter to where is it, as a lawyer you should know this, as a lawyer you certainly ought to know that all this is true. He brings them through like all manner of there's 28 sections. What I love especially is when he gets into, where is it here, the fact that the anonymous votes that are being cast for these people, that grant them this authority, they can't bring these people forward to actually
account for what they've done.
Yeah, no,
he doesn't like the secret ballot because he wants everyone to be everyone open with who they voted for, so he can get on their case for when that politician inevitably fails.
Write them an open letter in the Gazette, if you will.
Now, I do like Spooner's insight there that all of natural rights have been replaced by this fabricated right to vote.
Yeah,
as if because you get to vote, now all of your
I'm gonna
rights...
vote.
Yeah, you're gonna vote. You're gonna vote harder, man. Vote harder next time.
Just don't vote twice.
You didn't vote hard enough. Like somehow having the opportunity to vote means it's okay for your rights to be usurped.
All of your
government.
rights to get condensed into a mincemeat and spit out with whatever you'd end up getting.
Yes, so all of your rights are condensed into the right to vote, and if your side loses or your side wins, but the guy you voted for turns out to be a hypocrite, like so many of them are, it's like, oh well, you just got to vote again. Just
at the risk of getting contentious here, not with present company, obviously, but at large, I think there's an analogy to be made here between Spooner.
Don't do it.
Seeing Cleveland take office and make this BS speech where he wraps himself in the language of Spooner to a lesser, more, watered down version, of course. Mm-hmm. But nonetheless, I feel like there's a comparison to be made for like a theoretical MAGA. So Trump was voted in as a reaction against the immigration situation, demographic change in as it relates to immigration, and the fact that both parties, and particularly the right wing, ostensibly right wing party in America, was actually pro immigration much more than the others in the 90s. Um, and also as a reaction against sort of nation building, military adventurism, neoconservatism, and also corporations, like sort of like the blind loyalty to corporations you would see within the Republican Party going back till time immemorial, literally to the Civil War, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. Um, but and so the Trump phenomenon was
Not
a
to,
reaction to that, all that stuff.
sorry, not to mention just the fact that we were already primed for politics to get a whole lot more, uh, how you say, rhetorical, less substantive.
Sure, hyper
Yeah,
real, if you will. Yes,
yeah, no, the gloves metaphorically coming off, as
very
things
much
get,
metaphorically. Yeah.
yeah. So,
But my point though is I could see there's an analogy to be made between Spooner and a hypothetical MAGA true believer who looks at what has happened. Like there's a complete, I mean, like I'm not gonna sit here and just be like Trump bad or anything, but like just complete opposite of all those things. Like the absolute failure to deliver on not the wall. Remember the last time they brought up the wall? It's been years. The
Scott,
wall, the deportation numbers are not there. They bring up these phony baloney US Bureau of Labor statistics about paychecks as somehow as a metric with which we go, look how many way less immigrants that are here. So okay, I'm not this in Trump bad hour, but then also you get the corporations, this opaque combination of the military and the Pentagon with AI companies. That was like yesterday. Literally, they're like, we're just completely integrating all the AI companies into the Pentagon, and they're definitely going to be able to read the inside of your eyelids tomorrow.
oh,
And
and there was the thing about an agreement with, Israel.
oh, that goes
I
without
don't
being said. But to that extent,
the
to that
technocratic,
end,
what was it, the Technocratic Bureau or something or other?
yeah,
Did
they're
you?
going to make a big investment over there or
Very
something.
nice. So it's gonna be
And
real
but
nice.
best of all, I mean, we're literally as we record right now. By the time this episode comes out, I hope not. God hope not. But we could very much be in a hot war with Iran. Like this is the exact opposite of certainly when I voted for Trump in 2016. I thought this was literally it was again is a refutation of neoconservatism. And look where we're at in our year, the year of our Lord, Epoch Powell 2026.
Well, speaking of Powell's, Jerome Powell's under investigation. I saw that headline.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that
I remember there was a guy in our group chat, this really dumb guy in our group chat who was saying
that
to
was
me
me.
that Jerome Powell was like a deep Trump insider, and he
Nice.
was like a secret white rights advocate, that he traced all of his lineage back to the Mayflower, and so he was an undercover agent within the Federal Reserve Bureau system, with which he's going to subvert the powers that be to bring on a renaissance, a right-wing renaissance. And now he's under indictment by Trump. This is the funniest thing. It's so funny. These people are so full of shit.
Uh,
Still the
so
friendliest place on the internet, though.
True. I did. That guy had to leave for other reasons. That guy is insane. That guy was really insane.
uh, there's parts of this letter where particular verbiage aside, the way it's written, you forget what year it is. It's all very
It's timeless.
it's that seems to be the great thing about Spooner, is you can go back to it over and over again. There's so much to read, and I'm glad we picked these at random, more or less, or
No,
I
well,
brought up
you
Sumner for
suggested
its
Sumner to me, and then I go, "Oh, right, that's good. We can do like a sampling of his letters throughout his career, kind of thing."
a
That was the
flight,
idea.
a
Yeah,
flight, if you
a
will.
flight of
So,
Spooners. Yeah.
yes. This-
But yeah, no. So again, at the risk of that, contemporary mucking things up, and I don't like to be necessarily topical in the show because people listen to these episodes years later.
Mhm.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But it's
Um,
just another historical reference. I mean, I still remember the big L Libertarian Party going gaga over Trump in 2024.
Yeah. Did they? I wasn't paying attention. I don't know paying attention to those people.
Oh,
yeah.
they still take credit. The former Libertarian Party chair refers to herself as a kingmaker
Oh,
because they
well,
got Trump elected.
all right, great.
So like
Cool,
they're
man.
bragging about it too. So yeah, there's an unrepentantness.
Burger King maker.
Right, yeah, right.
It's the equivalent of setting up one of those inflatable tube men outside a car dealership. It's like that's what you do.
Yes.
You put that up.
Yeah,
And now there's
I gotta say this is
helicopters everywhere.
they are lucky Trump won if the Libertarian Party endorsed him. That's no endorsement I would want.
That's so
Oh, cool! The age of consent guys, awesome.
the driver's license guys.
Yeah, the
Well,
drivers like the
joke was that
seatbelt guys.
they purposely the joke was that they purposely put up a very weak candidate and had none of their
Oh, that is the
better known people.
most cope thing I've ever heard in my life. Oh,
Right?
Joke's on you. We were purposely putting up a bad candidate. That's not the best we could do.
Yeah, we put up a bad candidate because we didn't want our 2% to take away from Trump's victory.
Okay, man. That is 8 layers of Dom, you're dropping this on me right now. This is actually the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life. I can't believe they said that. What's going to be are they going to say that again when Dave Smith runs and loses?
Oh,
Like,
well, Scott,
that was the big thing is that Dave Smith took himself out of the running for the party, and so did a few other guys, and some guy apparently ate a gummy at the wrong time and bombed the debate. And so it was like they wound up with Chase Oliver, who everybody was going, who? This guy? And so then it sort of became okay for libertarians to say, look, our guy's nothing. We'll just throw in with Trump and see if he can free Ross Ulbricht. Not understanding that, yeah, he's going to free Ross Ulbricht, who Trump doesn't even understand what he did. He still thinks Ross Ulbricht went to prison for being a drug addict.
yeah, he probably just did it because he knew he could seize all the Bitcoin and use it to do gay ops online. I don't know.
Sure, and like that's what he's doing, and not understanding that how many more Ross Ulbrichts have you created by bragging about that? Oh, you threw in Trump. So Lysander Spooner would be one of the people who would have the self-awareness
Yeah.
to say, wait a minute, you're talking like me, but you're not acting the way someone who genuinely holds those positions would act, and you're not being honest about what government is and
Yeah.
what you're doing. I mean, you mentioned tariffs, Scott. Spooner goes off on tariffs.
Yeah, he does, yeah.
Which I love that he's going off on tariffs because I think that globalization is great, but not globalism. Globalization basically means that you're able to find trading partners beyond these imaginary
Four
lines
walls.
drawn by sociopaths known as political borders. Whereas on the other hand, globalism is trying to usurp political borders in order to build something impositional on top of it that spans the whole globe.
Sure.
So globalists don't like political borders because they get in the way of the one world government.
Yeah, they're
Whereas-
cosmopolitans for sure.
Whereas globalizing trading people don't like political borders because it's just a middleman getting in the way of you selling what you have to offer to somebody who just happens to live on the other side of this imaginary line, and now it stands in the way of you buying from someone on the other side of that imaginary line. So I see Spooner as the guy who favors globalization as long as it's organic and consent based, but does not favor globalism. And so I'm there with him.
Yeah, the problem with tariffs really is not so much that I'm not necessarily I've kind of had a sort of return away from libertarianism, but I will say this is that I certainly don't favor tariffs while there's also a fucking income tax. The whole proposition of the income tax was, hey guys, instead of tariffs, how about we just tax you on your income every year? And people are like, wait, no tariffs? Sign me up.
Right.
That's the history of the income tax. Like,
Sure.
so the fact that there's tariffs on top of that, it's like, miss me with that. You're making me pay twice.
A tariff is basically a business tax, and we also have business taxes.
Yeah. It should
It's
be the only thing, if
protectionism,
anything.
which-
If you're going to do tariffs, if you're into, listen, protectionism is not inherently, to me, a dirty word, but you're not just doing protectionism. You're doing crony protectionism, first of
Of
all.
course.
Yeah.
Of course.
It's as punitive on us as it is on.
It's more.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Essentially.
They're framing it as like, oh, we're charging China to do like business or whatever. It's like, no, you're not. First of all, by the way, I don't buy much from China, to my knowledge. So it's not like affecting me per se. But my point is, it's the broader principle of the thing is that you're hitting everybody twice, and it's just. Also, the other thing is like, you know where taxes go? They go to Somalian daycares and stuff. You know what I mean? They're not going to my community. I talk about this in one of our Albion Seed episodes. Like, the Puritans were the people who innovated, being like, yeah, I'll pay higher taxes, because they saw where the money went.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'd see a pothole disappear.
Well, they didn't have potholes back then, but
Brother.
they had paupers that went away.
Sure. Yeah. Fair enough.
Well, not went away, but they became productive members of society, I hope.
They became a neighbor, a good neighbor. The way we're all
You
trying
would
to
hope
be.
so, yes.
That's exactly. It's
The opportunity is there. Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah.
without. I mean, Spooner also he gets into what you mentioned before, the whole problem with the unconstitutionality of slavery. These guys, coasting for decades. The doubling down on every possible way to extract money from us and devalue our labor. One thing I love that he mentioned in here, it was the inscrutability of the law.
Yes,
And
this is great.
the inability of the common man to defend himself when he's called before a court.
Yeah.
And
Why should I need a lawyer?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The law
And
should be so. Laws are supposed to protect the most basic stuff. If it's not
Yes.
pure cronyism, if it's not
Mhm.
pure cronyism, it should be the most basic stuff. You attack somebody, therefore you're criminally and/or civilly liable for the damages that you cause. Real simple. That should be any person with a fifth grade education should be able to defend themselves in court for having done that. Or if they hadn't done it, say, it should also be pretty cut and dry as to how you prove that.
That was I jumped at when you mentioned you're paying an income tax while the tariffs are being hiked, and that's just a byproduct of their
inscrutability.
they're taking advantage of our short memories and our foggy brains
And lacking of understanding of like meta economic things like that. You know what I mean? And the fact that it's going to become a political wedge issue where libs and conservatives are going to now fight over it, and they'll adopt positions they never would have taken because it's the opposite of what the other side thinks.
Further crossing the wires of the bicameral mind.
Oh, no Democrat was going to take the Trump vaccine until Biden won and they wanted to mandate it.
Yeah.
Like
The Trump vaccine. I'm not going to take the Trump vaccine.
Oh,
There's so many of these things that it's impossible to remember all of them, and no one's going to but so much crazy, just stumbling over their own feet for those few 4 years, maybe. And they continue, and they always were doing that. But yeah, I just hope that. I mean, Spooner, this doesn't come up in public school. This is
No,
not.
even in Massachusetts, where he's like from here, he's like a
Half
one
of-
of the dude. People like the guy like Charles Sumner. Like again, he's the representative from Stoughton, the Stoughton district, or whatever. So I'm obviously like very hyper aware of him or whatever. But he's a massive figure in American politics from that time period, and he's like casually discussing the thought of Lysander Spooner over dinner with his gay friends. Like,
And
and yet
there
no
again,
kid, no high schooler in Massachusetts even has heard of him. Yeah,
because God forbid, someone is exposed to this kind of thought and these kinds of arguments that early on, or as early as possible. Yeah.
yeah.
Because, yeah, I mean,
It's
I-
toxic to the system.
yeah, no, it certainly will make their lives easier being aware of it. But
I still can't believe Michael Kretschmer, sorry, sold a piece by this guy in a book when you could just get it for free online.
oh yeah, yeah, it was all public domain essays and so on,
Just the
believe.
balls. I'm sorry, the chutzpah in order to think, oh yeah, this is what I should do. I should sell a book of public domain writings
I might have that
for
lying
money.
around somewhere.
That's
I'll
too
break
bad.
that up. There's a lot of books lying around. Yeah, always looking for a deal. The Spoon Man is impeccable, even though he has some ideas that probably should. Uh,
Go to
yeah,
bed.
yeah, he would have. He would have.
He would have
acknowledged
sunsetted
that
them.
himself. I think there was one. I don't remember where about the property passing between generations and it being in perpetuity, which it just stays within the family forever until the
Yeah, that's it. I mean,
it's
if you
untenable
can
to
try to do that, I
be.
guess if you want, but
I mean, I don't know. Is it?
yeah, this is like it's worth mentioning this guy had no descendants. So that
Oh,
makes sense that he had a foggy understanding of how like inheritance might work.
But
nonetheless.
he had a very good understanding of what we would call, in modern times, gender equality. This was way before the women's suffrage movement really got going. And Spooner, in this letter to Grover Cleveland, is questioning why adult women can't enter into contracts on their own.
Yeah.
Why don't they have the same rights? He's wondering why contracts are reserved only for those who are at least 21 years old. Plenty of people under 21, especially back then, have not only reached the age of reason, but they're working.
They're working for 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah, they're building their own lives. They may be working on their own homesteads. So he was very much into applying his convictions to as many people as possible. Anyone who was of sound enough mind to make a reasonable understanding of what they were trading should be able to enter into a contract, as long as it wasn't fraud or things like that. He gives kind of a three-pronged test at one point. But this was not an old boys club. This was not any sort of
very much
dynastic exercise for him. This was genuinely humane and all-encompassing human.
Yeah. Well, again, it's very Yankee of him because, like, again, Massachusetts was the first of the American colonies, at least, that ever like ruled in favor of a woman. Period. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and they granted divorces if there was like if the husband was not like being a good husband, like if he was cheating on them, like they would grant the women divorces and it wasn't considered a sin or anything.
If they heard him yelling at her through the walls.
The whole family shows up. Yeah, the whole town shows up if there's like an argument in the kitchen. Like,
Is something wrong? No, no, no. She put her elbow in this soup. It's fantastic. I'm just excited. It's like, okay.
There's a little bit of moral busybodiness in that, and you guys have covered that in other episodes, I've noticed.
yeah,
But,
I would say that that remains to this day.
oh, the moral busybodiness, yes.
Yeah, that has not stopped, I would say.
No.
Just the whole thing, Patrick, I just wanted to we were talking about in the Albion Seed episode about the Puritans, they were talking about how I'm going to think about this death every day of my life and just like wallowing in grief or whatever. Sunday morning I wake up, I got a text message on my phone. It's my mom. It's a person I have never met in my entire life and only vaguely understand who they are in relation to her. She's texted me at 7:02 in the morning. This person has died. And it just makes me think about all the times that I spent time with her and da 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 da. And I'm like, you are such a Yankee. It's crazy. It persists to this day.
Did you just send her back a picture of a Yankee cap?
No, I just said you're such a Yankee.
And she goes, what? And but
No, I've explained this to her before. That whole phenomenon of it being a Puritan value to be obsessed with dying and meditating on your death, and I'm not like that. But there's definitely there's like certain decorums that I feel are very important to be respected in day-to-day life.
It is a miserable thing to have that thrown at you, especially at 7 a.m.
Hungover, by the way. I'm already anxious. Like,
oh no, yeah, you already feel like dying, and then you look over and goes, oh no. So
oh, good. I have no idea who this person is.
yeah, which is the thing is, I don't know is this the kind of selfishness that Calhoun and Ayn Rand and would talk about, but
well,
I think
yeah, go ahead.
hear me out. Like when someone throws that at you, which Dom, are you familiar with this character, this personality type who
it's egoism. Egoism, I think, is the term.
They're they're typically gossipy, busybody, types who, whenever there's no drama amongst the living to, bandy about, they turn to obituaries. They turn to 4, 5, 17 degrees of separation of who died.
That's an old joke I heard a comedian do decades ago. Is like, yeah, my mother likes to play this game. It's called Guess Who Died.
There's something,
and it's phrased like that, as if you're supposed to know.
Yeah.
It's like, guess who died?
What day is it?
You got
Give me a hint.
Yeah, right.
This was like my old neighbor's daughter. Like my neighbor from when I was a little kid, her daughter. That's the person who died in the store in the text I got on Sunday.
You see what's happening now is, and this goes back to my point, is when someone does that to you purely out of their own just reflex of
I gotta tell somebody.
She's making you go, thank God, I don't know this person, I don't care, in the worst possible
I don't want to go that far. It's a little cold, but yeah.
But it's the only defense you have. When, unfortunately, and the only thing you can do is every single time someone does this to you, where they throw this at you in the middle of your day or the beginning of your day, or no one ever wants to hear someone died.
Yeah.
But it's especially.
Why are you reminding me of my own mortality first thing in the morning on a Sunday?
And it's a tricky thing to just tell someone, someone you don't know died. Like, I figured that already.
Yeah, it's every 7 seconds, right?
I think part of that is there's a loss of, say, common knowledge among people. Like
Mm.
if your parent or a close relative or close friend is saying that to you, they're trying to gauge whether you still remember the connection to that person that they remember.
Mm.
And it's the kind of thing that back before people physically moved to different towns, different
Right.
cities, different states, was something that could be, it's kind of a common knowledge thing. Like, oh yeah, you remember the guy from the old neighborhood. Like, I know people who've lived in the same town or small local area their whole lives. And
Right.
they're, 30, 40. And then there's me who, moved around a little bit when I was a kid, but then I lived in 4 states in a span of 2 years, right around the end of college as I was bouncing around in the newspaper business as a sports writer. And then, my 2 best friends growing up, both of them moved even farther away from our hometowns than I did.
Mm-hmm.
So there's sort of a,
Kind of
there is a
reflective of
loss
hard
of common
economic times,
knowledge.
by the way.
Pardon?
Kind of reflective of hard economic times, not for nothing.
It can be, but a lot of times, sometimes you move away because, oh, there's nothing going on here in this old small town and we just got to get out of here. But on the other hand, it's like, okay, but there's opportunities somewhere else. And yeah, people in my old hometown are doing fine, but like I'm doing fine also somewhere
Right.
else.
Of course, yeah.
And that's available to us, which is probably a very Spooner-like position to take. That,
Well, he certainly would be in favor of that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I like, especially being, a Catholic and a practicing Catholic. I mean, every week you attend mass.
See the same people, yeah.
Well, it's not only you see the same people, it's that you're always aware of who in the parish died because they mention their names.
Right. Of course, yeah.
And whether or not you knew the person closely, it's just an acknowledgement of the fact of life. But if someone had come running up to me, at the end of mass and said, "Did you hear who died?" And I was like, "No, who?" And it was
Maybe.
last time somebody did that to me. Do you know who it was who died?
Michael Jackson?
It was Charlie Kirk.
Oh,
Suddenly,
what a
I've
step
got people
down.
coming up
What
to
a
me,
step
and
down between the two.
I mean, some people were so distraught over this. They're like, "Oh yeah, I guess you've heard the news." And I'm like, "I mean, I've heard a lot of news. What's going on?"
Yeah.
Like, they killed him. It's like, who's they and who's him? It's like, oh, they got Charlie Kirk. It's like, oh yes, I did hear about that. Yes, but I didn't take it so seriously to the point where like it no longer needed to even mention his name, and I knew exactly who you were talking about who died.
I'm sure.
Like, so there are those.
Somebody
things
ran
in
up to me.
culture.
Somebody ran up to me and said, "Scott, one of your Twitter followers just died." True story. Charlie
Okay.
Kirk currently follows me on Twitter.
Oh wow, okay, so that's what it was.
Yeah, I'm serious.
Till Erica figures out the password again.
Yeah, changes it. Yeah, it unfollows this
Kicks
chud. Yeah.
There's I think there's
You have a great point, Dom. I want to say that's a excellent point. That it's a byproduct. It's a remnant of a closer culture, Scott, that we are
Alienated from
being
due
pissants
to
about.
demographic change, economic change, and by demographic change I mean by people are getting older and not having as many children.
that too.
And so there's less economic need for like services per se.
It's also a callback to how you opened this conversation, Scott, talking about how even though Lysander Spooner and John C. Calhoun were on different prescriptions for what to do
Right.
about slavery, they were operating from a common framework and a common acceptance of what were objective facts.
Yeah.
That doesn't even exist anymore. There's so much of a lack of understanding of even objective reality that people aren't even speaking the same language. It's just people talking past each other. Like I get the impression that even though Lysander Spooner was not very pleased with Charles Sumner or with Grover Cleveland, he was still confident that when he spoke to them, that they would understand what he was talking about, and when they
Yes.
spoke, he understood what they were talking about. That they
Definitely.
weren't just talking past each other
Yeah.
constantly.
That's a good point,
They
yeah.
had at least the common ground of acceptance of reality.
Yeah,
there's
it's
an
only going to get worse,
expectation,
isn't
yeah, that what they wrote down would be understood by somebody, whoever. If not Grover, then the public that read the letter
Right.
along with them.
And us, as it happens, a
Yes.
hundred, 130 some odd years later, for 30 some odd, yeah, 30 some odd years later,
And
we
even
still understand
opponents.
exactly what he's talking about and agree with a lot of his points. Not all of them, of course, not 100%, but we at least go, I see where he's coming from with that, and time maybe proved that wrong. But in the context of when he was writing, I absolutely understand it. I can empirically see why and where he came to that conclusion.
Sure. So he's not writing in a bubble nor for a bubble.
Yeah.
The algorithm has not taken over Lysander Spooner yet in the
Yeah.
1800s.
Thank
And
God for that.
he's definitely one of the uh, better better anarchist libertarian philosophers that you can get into. And I mean, he's no Rothbard,
Yeah, I do like Rothbard. I'm just gonna say I just
But,
like really respect
I
his respect like sort of his overall take where it's just he had the principled balls to say like Charles Sumner, if you're not gonna say that slavery was unconstitutional, you must let them secede.
Mm.
Like that is the moral choice to make.
And the great thing about him is he was involved. He's speaking directly to these people.
Yeah.
He's not just writing books, teaching classes. He was in the fray of so much change in America that he's you call him an activist, if you want to use that term,
I would say that's fair.
because I don't. Did he ever have any elected office or anything?
Nope,
I doubt
never.
it. Yeah.
Well, he had better than that, though. I mean, didn't he at one point challenge the post office by doing a letter delivery service that was private? Or am I thinking of someone
Exactly.
else?
Yeah.
That was
him.
So he was more than an activist in the sense that he was trying to practice his ideals, his mores.
Yeah.
He was the opposite of a hypocrite. He was putting these things into action. And that's a very respectable thing. He was
for
not,
that,
as
I salute him.
he called today, a keyboard warrior.
No, certainly not. Nor a quill warrior, which is
He was not a quillboard warrior.
quillboard warrior. Yeah.
It happened.
Yeah, so I think we covered a lot of the things I wanted to get to with this, but obviously it goes without being said that if you want a full snapshot of like the breadth of all the things he had to say, please do yourself a favor and go to the Liberty Library, online Library of Liberty, and check out all of his works. Of course, I do think it's hilarious, not hilarious, but I think it's there's a little bit of humor to it. The idea that he was this free market guy, and then all of his books are free for public domain.
That makes sense, though. Intellectual property is fake property.
True, that's true. That is a libertarian position, and one I
Though
also hold, by the way.
Though he didn't believe that, as far as I'm aware. He was very much in favor of intellectual property.
He was. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, I think he was.
Maybe that's
yeah.
the irony, is that he was a.
Yeah, I think
his
there's
works
a
are
little
now
bit of
free.
irony there. Although who would get the money? The problem is like even in his own formulation, it's like, oh, it's supposed to stay in the family forever. What family, bro?
Yeah, like it would stay in his estate. Like what estate?
Yeah, I don't think he was wealthy, but I don't think he was poor either. But like, I'm sure he just like left whatever he had left to like his buddies, like his like book buddies.
The help.
Maybe. Yeah.
I don't think he had help, Patrick.
No. Hey, we all need help from time to time. All right?
True that. Anything else you guys like have notes or anything you wanted to get to before we go?
No, yeah.
I think
got
we
to the
hit
big
all
bit.
the major points that I enjoyed. The letter to Cleveland did sort of get redundant. It seemed
Yeah.
like he laid out the basic thesis early and then circled back to everything and elaborated later, like he's going through Supreme Court cases
Yeah.
for paragraphs and paragraphs. But I thought his general thesis I thought was consistent not only between the two letters but even within that longer letter to Grover Cleveland, and like each of you were saying, it does resonate today. That's the thing about touching on real principles,
Yeah.
is that the principles are timeless. The application of the principles changes with circumstances, but if you've really hit on principles, those go from era to era. They can even cross cultures and
Yeah.
geography and borders and whatever else. That's part and parcel to really drilling down and discovering essential parts of what it means to be human, which I think Spooner was trying to do. Even if I think my earlier criticisms, I think he gets human nature a little bit wrong. He assumes that if people just didn't have these constraints, they'd be just more like him, and I don't think they'd be more like him.
I don't think that's that's certainly a utopian idea. But yeah, so Dom, what would you like to, obviously Good Neighbor Bad Citizen, the book. We got the Sunday Buffet podcast, all available
Yes.
on goodneighborbadcitizen.substack.com. Is that
Yes, sir.
correct?
Weekly articles on Wednesdays, weekly podcasts on Sundays. The podcasts are cross posted to Spotify, which I believe you also do with History Homos. I find
Yep,
you guys
it
on
does.
several other platforms as well. So yeah, they are there. Everything I offer is meant to be digestible. So it's more like the letter to Charles Sumner than the letter to Grover Cleveland. In that
True.
regard, I like to tell people that I don't like to dumb down really high level topics. I'll use some humor, but I don't like to dumb them down. The way I make them manageable is by keeping the portion sizes down. So the articles are under 1,000 words for the body. It's a 5-minute read at most.
Reasonable.
It's all
The Sunday Buffet podcast, it's over in 30 minutes. It's
And what was the name of your
Too soon.
Don't Bury the Lead is the name of the wrestling podcast?
Don't Bury the Lead is the pro wrestling podcast that a friend and I do. Yes.
So I assume you're really
those
broken
get a
up
little
about
longer.
I was gonna say I assume you're really broken up because John Cena has retired as a heel, if I'm not mistaken.
He did have a heel turn that I enjoyed because he did it so well. But then being a heel, it was kind of rushed because he only had a year to do everything he wanted to do.
Right.
So it was kind of sped up and rushed. But I enjoyed the Cena run. I thought the heel turn was excellent. He wrestled his way back into shape. So by the end of the run, he was a lot better than when he started
Sure.
that first year. So yeah, it was excellent. We are commenting on some sort of political and geopolitical things like the WWE's embrace of Saudi Arabia.
Oh.
They've already announced not only a WWE facility in Saudi Arabia and annual premium live events there, which used to be called pay-per-views before they put them on streaming platforms.
Right.
But there's going to be a WrestleMania in Saudi Arabia in Riyadh. There's going to be the Royal Rumble in 2 weeks from when we're recording this, which will be the end of January in Riyadh. So there's some geopolitics there going on. Of
Yeah.
course,
But they
the
had
stuff about the
John
business of
Cena.
wrestling in addition to just the wrestling in the ring. Yeah, I have many interests. Actually, no, I don't. I have few interests, but they seem disjointed.
I wouldn't say.
with
I'd
their
say
own.
that
I'm
wrestling
into
and
pro
politics
wrestling.
wrestling and politics are the exact same thing as it stands today.
It
I
kinda
have
checks
been
out.
known to say on the Don't Bury the Lead Wrestling podcast that pro wrestling is real and democracy is fake.
Agreed with
Perfect.
that. That is so true.
Like,
But good nay, bad sit on Twitter. I can
on
always
these
count
here,
on a
yes.
Dom retweet on the episodes.
Dom, if I may
Yes, I
ask,
am. They only gave me 15 characters, so I did what I could. Patrick, I believe you had the same problem with the Can't Get Fooled Again.
oh, yeah, no, I'm not adept when it comes to working around those little hurdles. Yeah,
Those
it's pretty.
constraints, those non-government constraints that
Yeah,
we do
no,
have to deal with, that Spooner would perhaps acquiesce to as well.
yeah,
Hey, it's in the contract somewhere, right? So yes,
somewhere.
but thank you for mentioning my book as well. It's
It's
uh,
great.
Lent is thank you. Lent is sort of the time when the material becomes more
Very
historically
relevant.
relevant. So the first 3 months of the year leading up to, I'm sort of promoting the book again because I realized that as I went through launching a Substack, there's a lot of people who knew me after that first year when I was very kindly invited onto several podcasts like History Homos to talk about the book. So I am.
So it's good to do another tour, then another podcast tour to promote the book.
Sure, if there's any new people out there, I'm of course willing to talk to them about it. And yeah, find me on Substack. That's where all of the current stuff is. I do publish
Awesome.
weekly writing, podcasting, and audio meditations on Fridays, FM radio. So the stuff is there. So basically, if you found History Homos on Substack, then it's not too difficult to go over and
Yeah,
find.
I think
Good
I
Neighbor Bad
recommend you're one of my recommended publications. Well, if you
City.
subscribe to History
Mutual.
Homos,
Yes,
righteous.
and I
Happy
have
to hear
the
that.
I have the greatest overlap with your Substack.
Nice.
Agreed.
Greater
Love to see that.
overlap than any of the big guys like Matt Taibbi or anything like that. Racket News,
Oh,
anyone
Don't
else?
ever do me a favor, Dom. Maintain your innocence, and don't ever look up what Matt Taibbi did when he was running an English language newspaper in Russia.
Okay,
Don't do
I
it.
remember him from Rolling Stone.
He did
Here's
some
a
naughty
question.
stuff in the 80s and 90s in Russia.
Oh, I imagine lots of people in Russia did naughty stuff in the
Yes,
80s
I
and
would think
90s.
so. Yeah. But anyway, for us,
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Listen, all this business in the Saudi Arabia with the WWE, who
Uh-huh.
played the joke on John Cena and made him learn Chinese?
Who made him
they would
do
say
what?
probably the Chinese did that.
He's speaking Chinese.
He's fluent
and
in Chinese or something.
He learned enough to deliver the apology after his movie snafu when the Chinese
He
China
mentioned
release was happening.
Taiwan as a country.
Yes. So the joke is that people were calling him John Cena after the Chinese premiere.
John Sheena.
John Cena, yes. John Cena. They were making pictures of him with the Mao haircut
Yeah.
since it fit closely anyway for a while. Yes, there were some jokes about that, yes.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Was what's he learning Chinese for? But it was an international.
He learned it
incident,
for his
so-
apology tour, yes.
Jeez,
Good for him. Very, very
We better
magnanimous of him.
we better
How
start.
close to where you guys are was John Cena born and raised? Somewhere near Boston, right?
Let me see what town he is. I know he is from Massachusetts, but I don't know what town. Hang on. Where is John Cena? West Newbury, Massachusetts. That's probably by, I'm going to guess that's probably by Springfield.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah,
So that's kind of like mid-state, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
kind of closer to New York, but not, but it's somewhat in the middle.
It counts.
Okay. Okay.
But
Yeah,
for
there
us,
you go.
www.historyhomos.com for the RSS feed. We're also available on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble, and most importantly, as we mentioned before, the Substack page, historyhomospod.substack.com. If you like the show and you want 100% more show, where we discuss philosophy and film and literature and history, please join us over there. It's an extra show every single week, and it's for one low subscription price. So that's the best way to support the show. You can also follow us across social media at History Homos Pod. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can email me your size and address to get a t-shirt at historyhomos@gmail.com. And at time of recording, still the friendliest place on the internet, our Telegram chat, t.me/historyhomos is the channel, t.me/historyhomos chat is the chat. Die with dignity. Patrick, what do you want to say before we go?
A joke my girlfriend said earlier made me laugh.
Hit me with it.
Spooner, I hardly know her.
Later, homos.
You say the law is sacred, you say the union stands, but I never sign my name with ink or shaking hands. Born into the bargain, shackled by the terms. You call it obligation, I call it what it earns. They told me it was freedom, wrapped in flags and seals, but parchment never binds the ones it never deals. I owe you nothing, hear it plain. No consent, no lawful chain. You call it order, I call it theft. No treason in what I've left. You say the vote speaks for me, speaks loud and clear, but choosing masters isn't choosing liberty here. If I refuse the game, I'm ruled just the same. Heads you in obedience, tails I'm still to blame. A ballot's just a leash with a softer hand. Still drag through dirt for the sake of the land. I owe you nothing, hear it plain. No consent, no lawful chain. You call it order, I call it theft. No treason in what I've left. They say the Constitution's a binding vow, but dead men can't command the living now. If law survives by bayonet in jail, don't call it justice, don't call it moral tale. A robber with a charter, still a thief, just better dressed with louder belief. If slavery's wrong when one man claims your life, it's wrong when millions sharpen the knife. No number turns a crime into right. No flag absolves the violent might. Show me the signature, show me the proof that I agree to kneel, agree to the noose. If law needs force to make me obey, then law has already lost its say. I owe you nothing, hear it plain. No consent, no lawful chain. You call it order, I call it theft. No treason in what I've left. Keep your core